What I am about to share with you is not just theory pulled from abstract concepts or academic research that has no practical application to your daily life. It is a pattern I have observed and researched after years of studying the psychology of highly sensitive people, empaths, and emotional intelligence. A pattern that explains why some individuals seem to possess an almost supernatural ability to read others, while others remain oblivious to the emotional currents around them. And it explains why empaths transform in ways that seem almost supernatural to outsiders. Why they evolve from the most broken souls into the strongest, most resilient individuals you will ever meet. If you have ever wondered why you can sense someone's emotional state before they say a word, why you walk into a room and immediately know the mood, why crowded spaces drain you in ways that do not seem to affect others, or why you sometimes feel physical sensations that mirror what people around you are experiencing, this video will give you the scientific framework to understand what is actually happening beneath the surface. Researchers are only beginning to map the neurological basis of empathic sensitivity, but what they have already discovered is nothing short of remarkable. Studies using functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI, have shown that empathic individuals often have mirror neuron systems that are more active than average, that their brains are literally wired differently from the majority of the population. Mirror neurons are the brain's way of simulating others' experiences, allowing us to understand what someone else is feeling by internally mimicking their emotional state. And in empaths, this simulation happens at a level that is both extraordinary and, at times, overwhelming, because they are not just understanding others' emotions, they are experiencing them as if they were their own. Today we are diving deep into why the strongest empaths were once the most broken souls, and what you learn may fundamentally change how you view your gift, how you understand your past, and how you navigate your future. To understand this fully, we need to examine what the research actually tells us about human behavior and relationships, because the patterns we observe are not random or accidental. Studies in social psychology, behavioral neuroscience, and attachment theory all point to the same fundamental truth. Human behavior is far more predictable than most people realize, and understanding these patterns gives you significant advantages in every area of life, from your personal relationships to your professional success. Research by Dr. Roy Baumeister on belongingness motivation demonstrates that humans have a fundamental need to connect with others, a drive that is as essential to our survival as food and water. This need is not just psychological, not just a desire for companionship. It is biological, rooted in our evolutionary history. Social isolation activates the same threat response systems as physical danger, meaning that being alone triggers the same stress response as being in physical peril. But this need for connection exists in constant tension with our equally fundamental need for autonomy, the desire to be independent and self-directed. Dr. Jack Braham's research on reactance theory shows that when people feel their freedom is threatened, they experience psychological reactance, a state that motivates them to restore their freedom, often by doing the opposite of what they are being pressured to do. This explains why people often want something more when they feel it might be taken away, why telling someone they cannot have something often makes them want it more intensely, and why pushing someone too hard often leads to resistance rather than compliance. On the neurological level, research using functional MRI has revealed that social rejection activates the same brain regions as physical pain, that the brain does not distinguish between a broken heart and a broken bone in terms of the neural pathways that are engaged. This is not metaphorical or poetic. It is literally true. The anterior cingulate cortex and insula, which process physical pain, also activate during social exclusion, meaning that the pain of being left out, ignored, or rejected is experienced as actual physical pain by the brain. This explains why emotional wounds can feel as intense as physical ones, why the loss of a relationship can cause physical symptoms like chest pain and fatigue, and why social threats can trigger such powerful responses that override logic and reason. Dr. Matthew Lieberman's research on social neuroscience, presented in his book Social, demonstrates that our brains are wired to prioritize social information above almost everything else, that we are constantly scanning our environment for social cues, threats, and opportunities, often without conscious awareness. This means that social dynamics are not just interesting sidelines to human existence. They are one of our brain's primary concerns, a fundamental part of how we navigate the world. What this means practically is that the patterns we observe in relationships are not random, not unpredictable, not impossible to understand. They follow predictable psychological laws that govern human behavior across cultures and contexts. The person who seems less interested often becomes more attractive due to the scarcity principle, because we value what is rare and hard to obtain. The one who walks away often becomes more valued due to loss aversion, because we are wired to avoid losses more than we are wired to seek gains. The one who maintains emotional stability while others react becomes perceived as higher status, because emotional control is associated with power and competence. Understanding these laws does not make you manipulative, does not mean you are trying to control others. It makes you informed, gives you the ability to see clearly what is happening rather than being confused by it. And in a world where emotional intelligence determines success more than raw IQ, this information is not just useful. It is essential for navigating the complexities of human interaction. The distinction between manipulation and wisdom is intent. The difference between using knowledge to exploit others and using it to protect yourself and create genuine connections. Manipulation uses this knowledge to exploit others, to gain power at their expense. Wisdom uses it to protect yourself and create genuine connections, to build relationships that are healthy and reciprocal. The journey from brokenness to strength is not a straight line, not a simple progression from pain to healing. It is a spiral, a process of returning to old wounds with new understanding, of revisiting past pain with present wisdom. The strongest empaths were once the most broken souls, because the depth of their sensitivity made them vulnerable to wounds that others could not even perceive. They absorbed pain that did not belong to them, carried burdens that were never theirs to carry, and endured relationships that drained them to the point of emptiness. But that same sensitivity that made them vulnerable also made them capable of profound healing, because they could feel their own pain deeply enough to address it, and they could feel the pain of others deeply enough to offer genuine compassion. The process of transformation begins with awareness, with recognizing that the patterns you have been living are not your fault, but they are your responsibility to change. The empath who has been broken and rebuilt understands that boundaries are not walls to keep people out, but filters to protect their energy. They understand that they can care deeply without carrying the weight of everyone else's emotions. They understand that they can love without losing themselves. And they understand that their sensitivity, once the source of their greatest suffering, has become the source of their greatest strength. Understanding why the strongest empaths were once the most broken souls is just the beginning, the first step on a journey that will transform every aspect of your life. The real power comes from application, from taking the insights we have explored and integrating them into your daily existence. So here is what I want you to do with the information we have explored today. A practical plan that will help you move from understanding to action. First, identify your patterns, the recurring themes that have shaped your relationships and your life. Whether you relate more to the empath's journey, the avoidance struggle, the dynamics of manipulation, or the behaviors we have examined, awareness is your starting point, the foundation upon which everything else is built. Take 5 minutes right now and write down the patterns you recognize in your own behavior and in your relationships, the things that keep happening over and over again. Be honest about what you see. This is for your eyes only, a private record of your journey. Second, practice the pause, the moment of awareness that interrupts the automatic reaction. Before reacting emotionally to any situation today, take one breath and ask yourself, is this my old pattern operating, or is this a conscious choice? That single moment of awareness, repeated consistently, changes everything over time, because it creates a gap between the stimulus and your response, a gap where choice lives. Third, set one boundary this week, just one, a small but meaningful limit that protects your energy. Make it small but significant, something that matters to you. Notice how it feels to set that boundary, the sensations in your body, the emotions that arise. Notice how others respond, whether they respect it or push against it. This is your training ground for bigger shifts, a practice ground for the boundaries you will set in the future. Research on assertiveness shows that skills develop through progressive practice, just like physical muscles, that each successful boundary strengthens your ability to set the next one. The psychology we have explored today is not just theory, not just abstract concepts that have no bearing on your daily life. It is a practical toolkit for navigating human relationships more effectively, understanding yourself more deeply, and creating the life you actually want, a life that is aligned with your values and your needs. Use it wisely, with compassion for yourself and others. Use it ethically, with integrity and respect. And use it to build the connections that deserve your energy, the relationships that are reciprocal and nourishing. The strongest empaths are not those who have never been broken. They are those who have been broken and chosen to heal, who have been hurt and chosen to grow, who have been drained and chosen to protect their energy. They are the ones who have taken their sensitivity, the very thing that made them feel different and even broken, and transformed it into their greatest asset. They are the ones who have learned that their softness is not weakness but strength, that their ability to feel deeply is not a curse but a gift, and that their journey through pain has given them a wisdom that cannot be learned any other way. So if you are an empath who has been broken, if you have felt the weight of the world on your shoulders, if you have been told you are too sensitive too many times, take heart. The very thing that has caused you pain is the thing that will set you free. The journey from brokenness to strength is not easy, but it is worth it, because on the other side of that journey is the person you were always meant to be. The person who feels deeply but is not controlled by those feelings. The person who cares profoundly but does not lose themselves in that care. The person who has finally learned to protect their peace while keeping their heart open. Subscribe to Human Behavior Intelligence for more research-backed insights into human behavior, for videos that combine scientific research with practical wisdom that you can actually use. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone who is struggling with their sensitivity and needs to know that they are not alone. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway, the insight that resonated most deeply with you. And remember, understanding people does not make you cynical. It makes you effective, empathetic, and ultimately more powerful in the best possible way. Because true power comes from understanding yourself and others, not from controlling them. See you in the next video, where we will explore another hidden pattern of human behavior that most people never notice. Until then, stay observant, stay curious, and never stop learning about the fascinating complexity of human behavior, because the more you understand, the more you can grow.